In today's episode, we have Amy, podcast host of Advancing with Amy. Amy talks to us about her challenges in dealing with bipolar while also dealing with premenstrual symptoms. Today, we understand her journey and how she overcame, so stay tuned. Welcome to Unapologetically Woman, the podcast where women come together to share their unfiltered experiences navigating womanhood. Join us as we dive into candid conversations about periods, perimenopause, postpartum bleeding, miscarriages, and more. This is a safe space where we embrace the raw, real, and often unspoken aspects of being a woman. Get ready to be empowered, inspired, and heard. This is Unapologetically Woman. Welcome back, everyone, to Unapologetically Woman. We are here with Amy, who is a mental health warrior and single mom spreading positivity into this world. And today she is going to be sharing with us her story about dealing with not only painful menstruations and having heavy periods, but also being diagnosed with bipolar. So as a woman, we already understand that our hormones are going crazy as it is. And then to be diagnosed with bipolar is another, we can say, like, extreme to the situation. So thank you, Amy, for coming on and being willing to share your story.
Oh, sure. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much. So earlier, you guys, I was talking a little bit with Amy, and we're going to go with her story here on, every woman we know remembers when her period started, what was going on at the time, the people that were involved at the time, and the situation. And we want Amy to let us know, when did your period start? What was the time frame at that time? And how was it viewed by society?
Yeah, it was 1982, if you can imagine. So I was 12 years old, and I was actually hanging out with my cousin, who was like my best friend. She's just about 2 years younger than me. And my mom was there and my dad, and we were at home. And I went to the bathroom not knowing anything was wrong and saw the blood and thought, oh my God, what's wrong? And then I called my mom to the bathroom to go, something's wrong. And she said, oh my gosh, you're a woman. You've started your period. How exciting. And I was mortified. I was mortified that my cousin was there. And then it was worse because my mom then called my dad and asked him to go get me what she called sanitary napkins. And I was just horrified that my dad was going to go to the store and buy those for me. And yeah, it wasn't very long after that my cousin went home. And I just I don't remember much after that for that specific day, just that I was mortified.
And that's interesting because you're like, I am mortified that I'm coming into this womanhood that you are celebrating right now. There's two different dynamics, that we can see happening here. You are mortified, and it sounds like you're mortified more so because, like you said, your cousin was there, but now your dad is getting involved in what is happening. So it's like it was more so, you're mortified because of everyone kind of knowing.
Yes. There was no privacy at all.
And okay, so, like thinking about that, there are, this idea of that being private to us.
Mm-hmm.
And that wasn't something you really knew that you felt about it until it was actually like happening.
Right.
So, right. So now that your mom is like, you're in womanhood and you're like, okay, I still don't want everybody knowing. How was your experience with your period? Because you said you went to the bathroom and you didn't know like anything was happening actually.
Right.
So you weren't having like any type of symptoms, I guess we would say at first. But how did that start to progress over the days, your first time with it?
I don't really remember a lot about right after that. I know that one of the reasons it was frightful for me was because when I was younger, I had bled and I was so young that it couldn't be my period. And so my mom had taken me to the doctor and I had colon polyps. So that's one of the reasons it was scary for me.
Okay. Okay. Well, whoa, that brings in a whole different perspective,
Yeah.
actually. Okay. So, you know, that happening prior to your period actually beginning, and then when your period began, it probably set you off to thinking that you had like polyps possibly again,
Right.
right? Something else is going on. So, like now you're associating your menstruation with something not good.
Yes.
Okay. So, okay, that's good to know. And that's very interesting, to actually know and understand that, like we're associating with the bleeding with our menstruation when it's actually something totally different. And
Right.
that's something that you would really think about, as
Yeah.
well. So now that you say that, what was the discovery to know, like, hey, you were too young to have your menstruation? How did they determine that?
Oh my gosh, it was awful. There was I was in third grade at the time, so
Oh,
very
wow.
young. And I was the youngest patient that my gastroenterologist had ever seen with these issues. And they did lots of, hate to say it, but enemas. And then they had to do a colonoscopy. And it was just not as advanced as it is today. So it was very painful. So I did not want to go through that again.
Got it. So there was like this trauma already associated with
Mhm.
bleeding coming out of your body when you were
Yes.
12. That's very interesting. And that started in third grade. And that's
Yeah.
such a long period of time, to be carrying that. I mean, it is a body trauma,
Yes.
with you that you carried with you. So you're going through menstruation. Did you like, maybe not after that particular time, but did you start to have like cramps, nausea, headaches? Did you start to have any symptoms as you were progressing more into womanhood, or was it more so no symptoms, you kind of just go to the bathroom and it ends up happening?
Yeah, I was just going to the bathroom and it ended up happening. The worst thing I could remember at that young age of 12 was that the pads were so huge and uncomfortable to wear. They're not thin like they are nowadays. Um, and they were just very uncomfortable and I felt like everybody could see it through my clothes. So it was embarrassing.
And that's one of the common things I feel like as women, that paranoia that everybody sees the pad. But
Right.
then it goes back to everybody knows that I'm on my period, and it,
Yeah.
and it goes back to that 12-year-old feeling like, oh my gosh, everybody knows I'm on my period. And there's this stigma with not wanting people to know that you are
Right.
actually on your period. And it's just very interesting with that happening. Is like, okay, like I don't want people to know that I'm on my period, but yeah, this is a part of who we are as women.
Right. But I think that society, especially back then, and especially with the male persuasion, they were looking for you to have any mood changes. Oh, I'm so sorry. They were looking for you to have any mood changes so that they could blame it on, oh, it's your time of the month or you're on the rag, that kind of thing is what they would say. And so I was so paranoid about being found out because people would say things.
And that's very interesting that you bring that up. Women, you see a lot of it in the workplace. Women don't want to talk about being on their cycle because of that judgment, like you said, from the male, I mean, from the male sex, when they're
Yeah.
basically it's it's like it's belittling our experience of
Hmm.
what we're actually experiencing as a woman. Oh, well, you must be on I'm entitled to be pissed the fuck off at what you just did. You know?
Yes. Yes.
Like you're an idiot. And what you
Hmm.
just did was idiotic, and I am entitled, regardless of my period or not, to be upset.
Right. Exactly.
So
It's
it's like
valid.
it's valid, and so it's almost as if our periods like make our feelings invalid.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's how, society, like you said, like back in like in that even in this time,
Yeah.
a woman expresses herself and it's like, oh, well, your period must be on. It's like, oh, you must be a douche.
Yes.
And my
That,
period is sensing it.
right.
Like,
My superpowers is that I can tell when I'm on my period that you're a real jerk. Yeah.
We need to just start saying that it's like, oh, my period sense is letting me know that you're a jerk.
I love
Like,
that.
it just start honing that superpower because
Exactly.
even our senses, like it increases, like the sense of smell, like all of this increases. It's really a superpower, right?
Yeah.
And now Amy brought up a very interesting point here, you guys, about how society, it sees us as women when we're on our period and we feel the need to kind of downplay that because we don't want that backlash. But something interesting happened. So Amy was telling me earlier, she started at 12. You don't really have the periods going on, but something major happened to you at the age of 18.
Yes.
So what happened at 18?
Well, at 18, I went to my first year of college and I was really struggling with depression. I was crying all the time. I didn't know why. It was a lot worse when I was premenstrual. Didn't want to get out of bed, didn't want to go to class. I just was not myself. And I went to a counselor at the college and they diagnosed me with depression. And then that just kept happening to me. And I would kind of swing through cycles and it would be like all of a sudden I'm depressed again. And so they diagnosed me with major recurrent depression.
Now, did you ever, I guess, when they diagnosed you with the major recurrent depression, it doesn't sound like it kind of happened immediately. It sounded like, you went there. So when did they actually decide, okay, this is recurrent depression? And when you were having this depression, did you ever notice it correlating with certain times of the month?
Oh, I definitely noticed it. Yeah, I would call my dad or my mom, and I would just be crying, and they'd say, "Are you okay? What is wrong?" And I'd say, I don't know." And I would start thinking about it, and I would think, "Am I about to start?" Oh, I am. Okay, so that's maybe what the problem is.
Interesting. And how you notice, okay, you're about to start and you're getting really sad, but you're also seeing that as part of the problem, your
Right.
menstruation as part of the problem, right? So you're
Yes.
still carrying this idea that, like, this is not a good thing,
Yeah.
you
Oh,
know?
definitely.
Right. So it's like, whoa. So it's interesting, women, when we do experience that dip, because it tends to happen like right before it starts, you start to get these, I want to say like it's things that are already there,
Hmm.
and it's like it starts to come out more like
Yeah.
during that time when you're about to get closer to that time. And so we feel like, oh, dude, there's something wrong with it. And also because you're that stigma, like you're so emotional and it's a
Right.
bad thing. And it's not a bad thing. Like,
Yeah.
so that's interesting. So you get really sad, which, I feel like a lot of women can relate to that, can
Yeah.
relate to that dip in mood and in energy levels. And when you notice that, did you ever try to like, how do I say, like kind of counteract that? If you're like, oh, I'm feeling sad because it's about to come. Did you ever try to incorporate different activities when you knew that was going to come? Did you decide, what, I'm just going to rest because this is what I want to do? How did you handle that?
I did not handle it well. I did try to talk to my PCP, my doctor about it, but they just kind of were like, yeah, 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 that's normal. Move on with your life. You've got depression, you've got premenstrual, sadness, big deal. And nobody ever wanted to do anything about it. I actually ended up self-medicating with things that I should not have. Um, and it took me a few years to realize that that was not the answer.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. That's interesting and good to know. And you know what is a common unfortunate theme
Mhm.
that I'm hearing from women is that the doctors were just like, yeah, 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 whatever.
Right.
And they're still like, yeah, whatever, you're gonna be sad. It's like, dude, could you at least do some hormonal checks right now to see what's happening so I can understand why this dip is happening? Because,
Exactly.
even through that, right? If you notice, oh, okay, I'm having a dip in this, then okay, I can incorporate this type of food into my diet
Mhm.
when, so it's like being brushed off that way. You have to come to, as a woman, to find out these things on our own.
Right. And back then, it wasn't like it is today. Like today, everybody's like, eat certain things, eat healthy, take care of yourself, self care, exercise, all those things. And it wasn't like that.
Okay, so it was you're right, because that's what I hear a lot of. A lot of women who are
Mhm.
coming out and they're just like, nope, this is it. This is what we're gonna do. Be you unapologetically. It's okay that you're sad. It's okay that you're angry.
Yeah.
And back then, like you said, it wasn't that type of. Not to say that it wasn't that camaraderie among women. It's just that women were more silenced.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Because
And
I
so
had great friends, but I didn't talk about that with them.
interesting. So even, your friends that are close with you, you're all going through periods, most
Yeah.
likely at some point in your lives. And still then it wasn't something that you wanted to openly discuss.
Right. The only thing we ever discussed about it was that we tended to, if you've noticed, you tend to like, if you hang out with people all the time, you have your best girlfriends, you tend to cycle at the same time. And we would kind of notice that.
Yeah, it's so funny. I feel like when I was like really like on that journey of trying to discover, that age where you're like taking up all these different jobs because you're really
Hmm.
still trying to understand what you like in life.
Yeah.
I would always, whenever I would mention like, oh, my period is coming in, and the women would be like, no, don't you say that, because they already knew it was going to sync up with them.
Exactly.
And that is also, as women to be able to observe that.
Hmm.
And it's like, dude, we are so connected as women. It's
Yeah.
like, there's nothing I am like doing to you to cause your period, but somehow what I'm emitting from my body is affecting your body.
Yes.
So it's like, dude, we are flipping powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. It is pretty amazing.
It's amazing when we get that portrayal of it,
Mhm.
but when we have this portrayal, which, you know, you're getting people who are looking at what you have as a weakness,
Right.
it has a different dynamics to it. But then when you realize, dude, I am absolutely like for me, right? I can tell you right now, I knew my cycle was coming on. I have like multiple tracking ways, and one of the things that I do is I base it off of the moon. You know,
Ah.
new moon comes about, I already know, I'm ovulating. Okay, my body's like, let's do it, let's get it on, put on some Marvin Gaye, like let's go. But I also start craving, like this winter has been pancakes and syrup. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I've been craving that sweetness, and I've been craving protein a lot, peanut butter in
Yeah.
particular. And it's like, okay, sometimes I get the headaches, but sometimes my energy levels will just start to
Oh, yeah.
plummet. And then it's like, I feel guilty that I don't feel like doing certain tasks that I need to get done. And it comes with that guilt because you feel like, oh, I'm falling behind. And
Yeah.
it's like, your body is just like, I'm gonna need you to take a rest. This is happening. There's no changing it
Mhm.
right now,
Right.
And
You have to listen to your body.
you have to listen to your body. And I feel like for so long we have been silenced, not only when it comes just to our bodies in general, but in the way that we view our bodies.
Yeah.
And wow, like this is such a big point Amy has brought up. And, Amy, she's letting us know about, the recurrent depression. She noticed that it's happening, right before her period starts, and she tried to self medicate, which did not go too well for her. So when we come back from this quick commercial break, we are actually going to go into Amy's story where she's telling us about not only now, it's not just recurrent depression, but now she's getting diagnosed with bipolar. So we're going to understand more about how that actually affects the menstruation process. So stay tuned. Welcome to Unapologetically Woman, the podcast where we dive into all things related to women's health, empowerment, and success. I'm Ms Tonya, a dedicated life coach using menstrual cycle synergy to help women executives, women entrepreneurs, and corporations, helping them establish better policies to accommodate women. If you are enjoying today's episode and want to stay updated with our latest content, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell so you never miss a new video. Share this video with a woman who would benefit from our discussions. We're always looking to grow our community and empower more women. We'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment below sharing the insights you gained from today's episode. And don't forget to like this video to show your support. If you are watching during the premiere, make sure you leave a comment during the premiere below in order to enter into our monthly giveaway where you'll receive live CBD resin gummy, CBD skincare products, a period tracker planner, and a spa certificate. Winners will be tagged and announced. New episodes premiere on YouTube on Wednesdays and Thursdays at 6 p.m. If you're ready to take the next step towards your own empowerment, book a free 15 life coaching session with me. Visit www.mstonya.com to schedule your session today. For corporations looking to support women's health, I offer consulting services to help implement better policies. Want to be a guest on our show and share your story? Visit our website or find the link in the description to express your interests. Thank you for being part of our community. Subscribe now, click the notification bell, leave a comment, like, share, and join us on this empowering journey. Stay tuned for more empowering conversations on Unapologetically Woman. All right. Welcome back, everybody, to Unapologetically Woman. We are here with Amy, who is continuing her story about dealing with depression along with her menstruation. So at the age of 18, she was diagnosed with major recurrent depression and noticed that the depression really hit when it was coming close to her cycle coming on. Now she's getting along the years here in her womanhood, and something happens where she gets diagnosed with being bipolar. So, Amy, I know you told us that this is 18 when you were diagnosed with a major recurrent depression, but when did you get diagnosed with being bipolar? And not only being diagnosed with bipolar, what was happening that made you, get more concerned?
Well, I was doing some kind of strange, like last minute, on a whim kind of stuff. Like I went to Connecticut to stay with some friends in my 20s and overnight decided I'm in Missouri and I was just there for the summer in Connecticut, and overnight decided I was going to move to Orlando, Florida, packed up right then, moved the next morning at 7 a.m. I had no job. I had no place to go. I slept on the beaches. I got caught shoplifting food at the time because I had nothing to eat. I had done this crazy thing and I didn't know why. And things like that were happening. And then I finally ended up going back to college, and I ended up pregnant with my son, who's now an adult. And so I'm in my early 30s and he was about 8, and they had put me on Prozac, and it made the depression so much worse, and it made me volatile. It made me angry. It made me just not a nice person. I didn't like who I was, and I was yelling at my kid for no reason, and I knew something was wrong. And so I went to my doctor and said, a psychiatrist at the time, and said, something is wrong and you've got to help me. Try not to cry. You got to help me because I'm not a good mom. And they said, you know what? I think you've got bipolar disorder, because Prozac, I found out later, makes bipolar disorder worse. And so they actually put me on a mood stabilizer. And so I And that made a huge difference. I still had some cycling and I still had some depression, but I wasn't screaming at my kid anymore. I could take a breath and think about things and put some space in between. Um, but I was having immensely heavy periods, and I had started cramping and, yeah, my 30s, yeah, the period was not good.
That's interesting. So, a couple of things that you touched on actually. When it comes to the heavy periods, you're saying that happened more so like in your 30s.
Mm-hmm.
And would you say that happened more so like postpartum? Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay, so the bleedings, and it's good for women to hear that, because after, a pregnancy, I think sometimes women might think that their periods are going to go back to the way they were. But from the many women that I interview, it changes either
Yeah.
worse or it actually ends up getting better somehow. But there's a difference in the dynamic. So your period pains, like you started having the pains now, and now
Right.
you're starting to have a heavy flow.
Yeah.
So did the doctors know anything about that? Did they say, oh, well, your uterus is this way, or like did they ever talk about like how the condition of your uterus might have changed post baby?
No, nobody ever mentioned anything to me. And it's not like I didn't go to them and say, hey, I am having really heavy periods, like have to change my clothes too often, kind of thing. Something I need help. And they'd just be like, oh, you're fine. And then I actually went on, have you ever heard of Norplant?
No.
It was at the time, it was injectable they put in your arm for birth control.
uh,
Yeah. And so even when they did that, I actually stopped having my periods for a year and a half, and I was only like 33 or something at the time. And they didn't care about that either. I said, shouldn't I be having a period? This this doesn't seem healthy. And they were like, oh, it's fine.
okay. The brush off again.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate, because there are many women who actually speak up about what's going on, with their bodies and work situations that they have to go through, and it's just always dismissed. Um, whether it be with our health or whether it be like the way like we presented ourselves, like if a woman is attacked at 2 a.m., it's she's no longer the victim. It's like, oh well, why was she out at 2 a.m.? Excuse
Exactly.
me? Can I not live my life
Right. And
freely?
what was she wearing? Yeah.
And what was she wearing? It goes back to blaming the woman. So even
Yes.
with our health, like, and you'll hear it. Many women are saying like they speak to their doctors, and it's almost as if it's like, oh, just deal with it. Like it just
Hmm.
falls back on us, and it's like, oh, we feel like it's our fault. There's something wrong with us, and you expressed that when it came to your son.
Yeah.
You're like, dude, something is not flipping right, and the Prozac that they put you on without properly even diagnosing you
Right.
made things worse, and it actually triggered things that wasn't actually triggered by your menstruation.
Yeah.
So that's very interesting. So you get diagnosed with the bipolar, you're having more heavy periods happening. So now that you're diagnosed with bipolar,
Hmm.
how did they explain it to you, and when did you feel your symptoms like more so?
Do you mean like the menstrual symptoms or the bipolar?
The bipolar, when did you experience it more in relation to your period actually?
Um, well, it was interesting because with the bipolar, even though for a while it got better, it quickly went downhill again. And it was a cycle of that because the meds would like work for a little while and then they wouldn't, and they'd try something new. And then I'd get like major migraines from the meds they put me on, or it could have been my cycle. I don't know. I was having major migraines. And so they'd try to switch up the meds and see if something else would take those away. So yeah, there was always something going on.
That's interesting. So you were basically put into this cycle of medication.
Hmm. Oh yeah, I was a guinea pig.
And so, being that, like you said, like a guinea pig, did you notice any other effects that it had on your body? Did you notice, like, oh, maybe your periods got lighter, or maybe you didn't do anything at all because the focus was only on the bipolar aspect? Did doctors speak to you, if you already knew, hey, I'm getting sad before my period, did that basically affect, even the bipolar medication in that sense?
I've never even thought about that until you said this. And I think it's interesting because nobody ever came to me and said, hey, maybe this medication isn't good for you when you are at this age and you're still fertile and you're still having periods and that was never discussed. Nobody ever came to me and talked about any of that.
That's interesting because what triggered it for you was basically, you felt like your sporadic behavior, right?
Mhm.
With the
Yeah,
And so, okay, you're having this sporadic behavior, and for them the answer was, okay, you're bipolar, let's put you on this.
exactly. There was not even any education about the bipolar disorder. It's not like they handed me a pamphlet and said, read up on this or read this book. I had to go do that on my own.
You know what I find interesting about that though, because I've done sporadic things like that, and I was depressed for one,
Hmm.
but I was depressed because of the way that I was living my life at the
Yeah.
time. And I up and left with one suitcase and moved to San Francisco from Florida.
Yeah.
And it was the same thing. I didn't know anybody there. Like, and people think that you're crazy, but when you said that, I was like, oh, she's on a self-discovery journey.
Ah,
I would not have immediate been like, oh, like she's uh bipolar. Like, one, I would have known that you are depressed based on that. That obviously
right.
like is a sign of depression, but I wouldn't have just been like pegged you as that. I
Right.
probably would have been someone been like, okay, well, what do you want to do, Amy? Like, what makes you happy, Amy? Like what
Yeah.
happens if it's really just that flip and simple?
Right. Nobody ever addressed that. But I think that I didn't have a plan. I didn't have money. I didn't have anything. So it's kind of like when you ask person if alcohol is a problem for them. It's not really a problem if it's not causing problems in your life. If you're still getting to work on time, your relationships are great, you're sleeping well, you just have a beer now and then, you're probably not an alcoholic. But if you're drinking all the time and you're doing stupid stuff and you're about to lose your job, there's a problem. And for me, there was a problem.
Okay, that's interesting. And so immediately it's just like, okay, bipolar, and there was really just no correlation with that in your menstrual cycle and your moods.
Right.
Because we definitely know menstruation has an impact on our moods.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just never thought by a woman presenting to me who is menstruating that things are going to also fluctuate with her menstrual cycle.
Right. And I think it's important to mention that these were not just male doctors. I usually like to go to female doctors because I felt more comfortable, and they didn't seem concerned.
Wow, that's interesting. You know what else to me? I feel like every man thinks a woman is bipolar when she's on her cycle.
Yes. Yes.
It's like, oh, well, she's gonna have erratic mood swings, she's on her cycle, and it's still something that's dismissed.
Yeah.
And I like the fact that you're able to come out and speak like, hey, like this just goes beyond like menstruation. Like this is actually something that was going on with me. Like I was diagnosed with bipolar, but also I think it's a way for us to communicate that other things need to be considered when you're putting people on medication who are menstruating and having mood swings, because
Yes.
it's like, dude, if she's already getting sad before her period, that's something that needs to be known, or actually it's something that needs to be acknowledged.
Yes.
Also, it's like, okay, so that you can actually adjust to your natural flow.
Well, and I do think that in this day and age, things are getting better. A doctor is more likely to look at you as a whole person, and they look at things like spirituality and your physical body and your mental health, whereas that was not the case so much back in the 80s.
Wow. That is, wow. That's crazy because it's like, I think about the 80s and I don't think about it being far behind like that. You know what I mean? Because it's like I was
Yeah,
born in the 80s,
right.
So I grew up in the time of the 90s where I'm watching, these powerful women who get on TV and are like, no, independent. Like, it was like really, I feel like a big movement of independent women, like in the 90s. And they're like,
Yeah,
I remember Queen Latifah, on the
yeah,
TV. She's like, who you calling a bitch? It's like, what? Yes, like speak the truth.
yes,
It's like our generation starts to really carry that.
yeah.
And there's of course backlash from the older generation who believe
Hmm.
that a woman needs to be silenced and you speak when only spoken to. And
Right,
like even the fear of traveling by yourself because you're a woman, it's like you don't do that. You need someone with you. Like,
right.
and it's that two generations were like clashing
Oh
a lot
yeah. Oh yeah,
because of that.
I was raised you go to a mechanic with a man with you so they don't take advantage of you. You don't talk about personal issues, you don't talk about money. It was a different time.
Yes. And wow. Thank you so much, Amy, for sharing that. I really hope, you know, other women who do deal with whether it's bipolar or any other type of mood swings that you start to see how it can correlate with your cycle. And every
Yeah.
woman is different. If you're starting to notice, hey, around this time, my energy starts to go down. It's like, okay, acknowledge and honor that,
Right.
just acknowledge and honor it. And it's like, okay, once you do that, you're basically accepting, okay, I know I get sad around this time. So you know
Yeah.
what? This is mommy time.
Right.
This is mommy time, like mommy's gonna go to a spa and get a facial,
Yes.
so that because it's like there's nothing really you can if you don't want to take like medications or something like that, or you now that we have this information,
Mhm.
it's like, oh, let's incorporate, pineapples or something that
Right.
awakens like your senses, and it's like, okay, now that we have this information and it's really important, if you're
Yeah.
dealing with any type of mental health to also look at how that changes
Yeah.
with your period. Because I mean, what, it's 28 days out of the month.
Mhm.
So we only got 2 to 3 days out of the month.
Right. And what do you think about I've heard people talking about getting days off work for your menstrual cycle. How do you feel about that?
I am totally for that. That is so
Yes.
funny you mentioned that because that's one of the things I advocate with corporations because a
Oh,
lot of
right.
like these women in these executive roles
Hmm.
are working like a man. Like it's
Yes.
straight up, they're pushing through their period pains, they're popping pills. They don't want to show that they're on their period because they think it's a weakness. So
Right.
that's already something else. And it's like, dude, no, this is our strength. Like you're not going to be productive this way.
Right.
And that is like the company, you want money, right? You like talking to these companies like you want money, then she needs to be optimal at her
Well,
best.
and if you want loyal employees who actually want to stay with you long term, you treat them well and you let
Yeah.
them take care of their physical health and mental health.
Absolutely. And that is a part of a woman's health. And I am totally an advocate for period days. I don't mean PTO, trying to combine it with PTO. No, we deserve to go on a vacation if we want to. But
Yes.
also our health, we deserve to have period days. And I'm
Yeah.
not saying that a woman takes off like 7 days for her period. Like
Right. And
it's
one
not
month
even
you might not
necessary.
need it.
Exactly. It's like, but those like 1 or 2 days, like
Hmm.
that, like my energy's down. I can't provide the best customer service. Like
Right.
I'm not at my best. I need this time for myself. Give her her freaking 2 days. It's not
Yeah.
that serious. Like, These men want to be macho. Well, step the fuck up now.
Yes. Yes, I agree.
Step up now, dude, because I am taking time for myself.
Well,
And yeah,
I am happy to see people like you out here advocating for this. I think that's so wonderful that there are women willing to stand up and say, hey, let's talk about women's cycles and periods and how it affects us. Until I talked to you, I had not thought about a lot of these things.
oh, wow. You know what? And I hope that, others who are watching as well, or they're listening on their, platform, get that same inspiration, that same empowerment. Like, hey, this is something to think about. Hey, maybe I should go to my doctor and be like, hey, I've been tracking my menstrual cycle and I've noticed my energy levels, it starts to fall right about this time. And you got me on this stuff right here. Like, how is this, like, like, to start questioning, and I think that's another thing too. Women, we need to really start questioning our doctors, whether they are male or female. Like, if they don't have our best interest, or if they're brushing something off, it's like, oh, well, how long does it take to do a simple blood test when you're near your period?
Right. If you can't find a doctor that is, or if your doctor at this time is not listening to you, find a new one that will listen.
Yes, I highly agree. Find a new one that will listen to you and take other things into consideration as you as a woman.
Yes, I agree. But think about it. There's so much, I don't know if you've heard, there's so much going on right now with research where they're finally starting to do research on women. For so many years, they were researching men for all of these different things, heart issues, cancer, whatever, and nobody was looking at women.
That's interesting that you say that. So I mentioned this previously, but I had an opportunity to work on the documentary Periodical. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie. But it was picked up by MSNBC. So honored to have been on that show. I worked as a production assistant on that show, actually on that film, and it's a documentary about women in their periods all around the world, right?
Wow.
And one of the things that I was honored to be a part of was to listen in on the interviews. And there was a scientist there, and she said something that just really switched for me. She said, doctors will ask you to bring in your dog's poop sample,
Yeah.
right? She was like, but why aren't doctors asking women to bring in their menstrual sample?
Wow. Never thought about that. That's fascinating.
And she said, she was like, through the cells of our menstrual cycle, she said, you can tell the entire health of a woman's uterus.
You're kidding me.
I'm like, what the flippin' crap? Like,
Wow.
exactly. So it's like, dude, wait, what? She was even speaking about how there are, cells in our menstrual cycle that can actually cure, guess what? Cancer.
Oh my goodness. See, we are amazing creatures.
We are amazing, fabulous creatures. And every single month we produce healing.
Yes.
I've even like heard a woman who tells me like she'll take like her menstrual cycle blood and it'll be a ritual for her. Like she will give it back to the earth, to the plants.
Wow.
And it's very interesting how her plants thrive. So, even when we talk about like the placenta and the placenta, right? So it's like, wow, we should also know that information about our menstrual cycle.
Yeah, I agree. That's like a revelation for me right now. I'm just totally in the moment going, I have been my whole life thinking what a horrible thing this period was, and it's really a beautiful thing.
Yes, and thank you for saying that, Amy. Thank you for saying like, dude, like I have to switch. And you mentioned, you guys don't know, but Amy has a daughter. So now her daughter can have this information passed on to her earlier.
Yes.
Because it's taken us over like 10 years to get in tune with our bodies, right? But when we start teaching this at a younger age, and we start switching that perspective of how we're looking at it, we could really, as women, just thrive.
Yeah, I agree. That's beautiful.
Yes, thank you so much, Amy, for joining us. I do appreciate your story, and I really feel like this will be an inspiration to other women who are dealing with other mental, like, I don't like to say, well, mental issues, because I honestly feel like we all have mental issues.
Oh, yeah.
Like, to be honest,
Anxiety, everything. Yeah.
all that is mental issues, and it's like the way to deal with it, the way to go about it and to understand it. And now we're in this time, where women are just like, let's do this. Like, let's
we are who we are, and we're going to talk about it.
Yeah, we're going to talk about it. Like, as much as you don't like it, like, you're going to deal with it, like, I'll bleed all over you, dude. Like,
That's funny.
but yes, this is Amy, everyone, a mental health warrior spreading positivity through mental health education. You guys make sure that you definitely check out her Facebook page and check out her podcast, okay, because she does some amazing interviews, okay, with amazing beings, and I'm sure that she is going to continue to thrive.
Oh, thank you so much. I really enjoyed this.
Oh, thank you. I did too. And we will catch you guys in a bit, so stay tuned for our closing. Thanks for joining us today. Learn more about our guests in the description below. Download your free period tracker to stay in tune with your energy levels, mood, cravings, and your flow. Interested in being a guest on our show? Complete the form in the description. Leave a comment below to share your thoughts on today's episode and be entered into our surprise monthly giveaway. For women looking for a natural way to relieve menstrual cramps, try live resin gummies to ease menstrual cramps. The link is available in the description. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more empowering content. This is Unapologetically Woman.